Tonight on Mississippi Insight, change comes to Mississippi.
By a vote of 37-14, the bill passes.
Lawmakers vote to change the Mississippi state flag and the governor signs the bill. Tonight, how that vote came together and what kind of political impact will there be? And reaction to the flag vote. We're talking with the president of the NAACP, who's been fighting for change for nearly 3 decades. And the widow of the late Medgar Evers shares her joy at the change. Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thanks for joining us. To many, it was a symbol of hate. To some, it was a symbol of heritage. But tonight, the former state flag of Mississippi is officially a museum artifact. Retired this past week following a vote of the legislature and a signature of the governor. Many had been fighting to retire the flag for years, and in the end, change happened in just 5 days. Votes by lawmakers on Saturday and Sunday to pass a flag change bill. Governor Tate Reeves signed it on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the flag came down at the state capitol, one transferred to the Mississippi History Museum, where it will go on display.
I want to cry. I really do. When that flag hit my hands, that was the most amazing moments. If people could talk about ancestors, all of them came down on me today. I was standing not only for myself, but I could see Fannie Lou Hamer, I could see Medgar Evers, I could see all the people who've worked to be the same, the balance that we needed. And we have a lot more work to do.
The retirement of the state flag is a victory for the NAACP, especially its president, Derrick Johnson, who formerly led Mississippi's chapter and has been fighting for a flag change for nearly 3 decades. Joining us now is the president of the NAACP, Derrick Johnson, who joins us now via Zoom. Derrick, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
First, your reaction to what you saw this week, the vote in the House and the Senate, the governor signing the bill, and then the flag eventually coming down, all in less than a week.
It's long overdue. While a student at Tougaloo College, I was one of the many plaintiffs that joined a lawsuit in 1993 calling for the flag to come down. I'm really celebrating because individuals such as Henry Kirksey and Aaron Henry, Aaron Shirley, and many, many others who did not live to see this moment, but most importantly, individuals like Congressman Benny Thompson. Those men and others, Aneva Pittman, fought for decades to ensure that the symbol that reflected this state represented all of the citizens and not just some of the citizens.
What does that flag symbolize to you?
It symbols an era that should never be celebrated. The actual emblem was the Confederate battle flag for General Lee's Northern Virginia Army. It was resurrected in the 30s and 40s, primarily used as a symbol of racial hatred and oppression, particularly in communities across the state. It was either a burning cross or that symbol that was being used when there was a lot of terror in the African American community. And it's also inconsistent. It's hard to be a patriot to the United States and also celebrate the Confederacy. Those two things are at odds. The Confederacy was an effort that where people took up arms against the Union, the United States. The United States is an effort to hold all citizens together as one community, as one country. And it's hard to celebrate both at the same time because those two things are in conflict with one another.
Realistically, did you ever think this would happen?
Eventually, yes, I did think it was happening. When it would happen, how it would happen, no one could have predicted. The current climate was conducive for this. I can say the business community has been an advocate for this. Not only when we filed the lawsuit in 1993, I was also the campaign manager for the referendum in 2001. So this is a long time coming. The 93 lawsuit was successful. The Supreme Court held that the flag was never officially adopted by the state of Mississippi. The state legislature then decided to put the question on a ballot referendum, and that referendum was in 2001. But to be clear, you cannot put something like this on the ballot. Had we had a ballot referendum to determine whether or not to end slavery, slavery would have never been ended in this state. If there was a ballot referendum to determine whether or not schools should be integrated, we still will be operating in segregated schools. The courage that finally we seen to remove this rag of hatred is an important milestone for the state of Mississippi. Now the question is, can we get the public policy to also reflect the action that was taken this week?
Once the ball got going, it really moved very quickly. Were you surprised how quickly things were moving?
I was pleased to see things move quickly. If you say that 27 years in this effort is quick, this should have been something that took place a long time ago. I'm just glad it took place when it did.
What does this mean going forward for Mississippi?
But it could mean a lot of things, or it could be simply symbolic. That's the question for policymakers to answer. Are we going to move the symbols of the past and stop there, or will we begin to address the substance of the harm the past brought upon this state and many residents of this state? That's a real question that policymakers need to ask, or voters at some point need to decide.
And what changes would you like to see going forward?
Equal protection under the law is something that should be afforded to all citizens. Mississippi, we score at the lowest quartile at every indicator where we should be performing better. If we want to improve the quality of life, if we want to open up business opportunity, if we want this state to be a model of success, we need to take a serious look at our public policy. We can no longer sell our citizens as a cheap labor force. We need to look at education and begin to put in place what will be necessary to grow a education system that provides quality for all students. If we want an environment where we don't see mass exodus of our young people, black and white, because we lack opportunity, we need to adjust the public policy framework and know that it has to be an inclusive framework and not the same policies of the past that have been very exclusive.
Does this open the door for businesses outside of Mississippi to look at Mississippi now?
It opens the door for considerations. There is no way to measure the loss in business opportunity as a result of our position on this flag. We are a state that lacks a single Fortune 500 company headquartered here. There's a reason for that. We're a state that lacks any true business progress. There's a reason for that. The question for policymakers and the citizens of the states, are we prepared to move forward to attract the type of business opportunities many neighboring states have already begun to do, or are we going to be stagnated in a past that would never allow us to truly appreciate a future that we will want our children to live in?
Derrick Johnson, President, CEO, NAACP, thank you for joining us and talking to you again.
Thank you for the opportunity.
When we come back, the potential political fallout from the flag change and other issues that came out of the 2020 session. For the time being, Mississippi is without an official state flag. The new banner will be chosen by a commission and then a vote of the people. 12 News' senior political correspondent Gerald Harris looks at the process.
The work has already started to replace the flag that has flown over Mississippi for more than 100 years. Each lawmaker had his or her own decision to make regarding the former state flag.
I consistently vote the will of my district. And when people reached out to me and asked me overwhelmingly to give them something to vote for, not something to vote against, I responded.
Now Mississippi is moving forward to replace the 1894 flag, beginning with forming a committee to nominate one flag.
Make quick work of this, get their selections in, and start to work on some new designs. And that by September 12th, we'll have something we can put on the ballot.
Voters would then be able to reject or accept the one recommendation.
But we'll continue this process until we get something that the voters get 50+% that they decide on that they like.
The new design cannot contain the Confederate emblem and must have "In God We Trust," a design lawmakers hope will draw unity.
Persecution discrimination, all those things that the flag represented. You tell me your heart has changed and it's gone away. Let's prove it by enacting policies that help more people in the state of Mississippi.
The former Mississippi state flag is now retired to the Mississippi Museum of History. In Jackson, Gerald Harris, 12 News.
In order to change the state flag, lawmakers needed a 2/3 majority to bring up the bill. That meant getting the vote of many Republicans and getting the signature of the governor, many of whom were opposed to having the legislature decide the issue. So how were so many minds changed so quickly, and what is the potential political fallout from the flag vote? Sarah Ulmer covers the Capitol for y'all politics. She joins us now via Zoom. Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Byron.
How did those votes come together, and what kind of convincing needed to be done?
Well, as with any legislative session, there's always conversation happening amongst legislators of big things that they might like to see happen. And that is no exception with the flag issue. For a few weeks before the bill was actually passed, there had been some conversations happening among legislatures, especially because of what the national news around, how we are treating our Confederate symbols is going right now. And so those conversations began to happen, and people began to talk about what the possibility of changing the state flag would look like in Mississippi. They got the resolution passed, and then it came to the votes. And I'll tell you, just from covering it, that was not an easy vote to secure. For even a lot of lawmakers that are for changing the flag, it's still a big controversial thing because many of them have told constituents in the past that maybe they would let them vote on the flag in a November ballot, which obviously we see didn't happen. And so I think what really happened is the business community coming out in support of the flag change in just drones. So many business community members said, hey, we support a flag change. And that really started getting the attention of lawmakers and saying, you know what, maybe this really is the time. Maybe this really is the opportunity for us to change the flag. Then obviously you saw the SEC commissioner come out and you saw the universities follow suit. And I think that did have a lot of weight as well. And it kind of gave some of those people who were saying, maybe this is the time, maybe it's not, maybe this is the way we do it, maybe it's not. It kind of gave them the push to say, okay, people are behind us. This is going to happen. We can be a part of history. And then obviously, the lieutenant governor coming out, the speaker has kind of always been a proponent of seeing a flag change in some way. And I think the icing on the cake, honestly, was the governor coming out and saying, you know what, if they do this weekend, I'm not going to veto it. You kind of have my blessing to let the legislative process do what it does. And if we pass this, we pass it and I'll sign it.
Towards the last day or so, there was about 20 senators in there that I guess were the holdout. What flipped some of those senators that were in that 20?
A lot of what we've heard had a lot to do with the "In God We Trust" being able to be on the design or having to be on the design that is going to be brought forward by the commission. I think for a lot of people, that was something they wanted to see happen. Obviously, our state seal has has the same motto on it. And I really think that's what pushed a lot of people through. But in my conversations with many senators, it was honestly the calls of their constituents calling and emailing and texting and saying, hey, we're not on Facebook making a bunch of comments, but we want you to know that we want to see this happen. We want to see Mississippi move forward and a new flag be adopted.
What made the governor decide? He's been pushing for a long time, saying he wanted the people to decide this, but he decided that he was going to sign this bill. What do you think pushed him to make that decision?
I don't want to speak too much for the governor, but I will say I think a lot of the stance that he took on it was there is a legislative process, and that's a way that things happen in this state. And, a lot of decisions that get made that directly impact the people are not voted upon on the ballot. They are done by legislators in the Capitol. And I think at the end of the day, the governor said, this has been my stance. And just because he said I'm going to sign it doesn't mean that his personal belief about a ballot vote changed. It just means that he said, this is the direction that the legislature has gone, and maybe it's time for us to maybe do something about that. And so if this is what they choose to do, I'm not going to stand in the way of that. So I really think it was the support of everyone coming around and saying now is the time for Mississippi to take a step forward and to take a step into the future. And adopt a new flag design. And so for him, I really think that probably was the push. But again, I don't want to speak too much to the governor and to what was going on in his mind, but that was kind of what we saw amongst conversations once that decision was made.
Sarah, immediately after the governor signed the flag bill into law, we had one lady email us and promise that Tate Reeves would be a one-term governor. Will this cost the governor support among those who wanted to keep the current flag?
You know, I think that everything changes once you get to a ballot box. And I think that there is something to be said about the silent masses that are very much in support of this flag change. But obviously, this did activate a lot of people who said, you know what, we don't want to see the flag change. And I think right now you're hearing those voices because they are upset. They are frustrated. And will it change their vote in 4 or in 3 years? Sure, it might. But I do think there are a lot of people out there that aren't on Twitter, aren't on social media, that are very much for seeing this flag change. And so, you know, only time will tell. Obviously, 3 years is a long way away, so we'll have to see how that influences people. But from hearing from the senators and the representatives that said, you know, it was really the calls that came to us that were the encouragement to vote. You know, Senator Chad McMahon spoke on the floor in support of the bill and said he had over 15,000 types of correspondence from constituents of his, and over 10,000 of those were in favor of the flag change. So I feel like a lot of times you have to pay attention to what the silent voices are saying and not just what those who are offering to reach out right now are saying. And you never know, their minds might change once the commission comes forward with a design. They may decide, you know what, I like this design too, and that could sway their opinion of what legislature did last weekend.
When it comes to the COVID, the coronavirus money, and also the flag, a lot of working hand in hand with Republicans and Democrats. What do you make about the relationship that they've had in this legislative session?
I really feel like we've seen a lot of camaraderie between the parties this year. It's just, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. People are coming together, and the legislature is no exception to that. And just with the flag, with the criminal justice reforms, with the ability to appropriate dollars as quickly as they did from the CARES Act and get that out to people, you know, I really do think that they are doing their best to work across the aisles as often as possible.
Sarah Ulmer, You All Politics, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Byron. Appreciate you having me.
All right. When we come back, a civil rights icon shares her thoughts on the flag change. We're hearing from Myrlie Evers-Williams. The flag change came the same week as what would have been Medgar Evers' 95th birthday. We spoke with his widow, civil rights activist Myrlie Evers-Williams. She hailed the change that came to her home state.
My husband, Medgar Evers, paid the supreme price for liberty, for the people in Mississippi, and particularly for his people, the people of color. Today is a day where I feel that we have become liberated, not only in mind, not only in thought, but also in deed. That is critically important, and it sends a message to all Mississippians, and it sends a message to the rest of the country that Mississippi is a part of these United States of America. We pledge allegiance to a flag where all of us are said to be created equal. My husband believed in that. He fought in World War II for this country. He gave his life on the doorsteps of our home, and he was shot in his back on June the 12th, 1963. He fought for things as such of what is happening today. I am so thrilled. I am very, very emotional about it all, because it says Mississippi, the state of Medgar's birth, the state of my birth, is moving forward, and hopefully will set an example for the rest of the country to explore its racial divisions and come to a point where we can say all of us are individuals under the flag of the United States of America. I love Mississippi. I was born in Vicksburg. I have gone through hatred because of what happened to my family, of my husband giving his life, and he knew that it would come to that. I'm overwhelmed today with emotion because I was not sure that I would live long enough to see this happen. It has happened. I have been able to witness it. I can add to, yes, I love Mississippi. To that I can add, as of this day, and when the new flag goes up, I can say I am proud that Mississippi, the land of my birth, has moved forward this far in the country in which I was born, the United States of America.
Thanks to NAACP President Derrick Johnson and Yale Politics' Sarah Ulmer for joining us. On this 4th of July, we wish a happy 244th birthday to the United States. Join us again next week for another edition of Mississippi Insight. Until then, make it a good night.